when you take a step back and really look at the world as a whole, right, it becomes difficult to ignore the pattern that we keep repeating as human beings. Because no matter where you turn your attention, whether it's the global north or the global south or anywhere in between, you will almost always find some form of breakdown happening at the same time, right, as progress. And that contrast is what makes everything feel unsettling today. Because while some people are living comfortably and going about their daily routines, others are dealing with hunger, violence, displacement, and loss. And these realities exist side by side, right? In a way that forces you to ask what exactly went wrong with us as a species that has so much intelligence and capability but still struggles to create balance. It is easy to say that human beings are destructive. And honestly, there's truth in that because when you compare the natural world without human interference to what we have built, you see how much strain we have placed on ecosystems and on each other, right? And even on the systems we created to maintain order. And yet the problem is not simply that we exist, is that we often operate without awareness, without restraint, and without the kind of internal stability that allows for thoughtful decision making. Which is why the same patterns of conflict, inequality, and harm keep showing up across different regions and generations. Now, what makes the situation more concerning is that these large scale problems are not disconnected from everyday life as much as we like to think, right? Because the breakdown we see globally often reflects the same kind of breakdown that happens within individuals, within families, and within communities. And when people are overwhelmed, reactive, or unable to think clearly, the decisions they make in their personal lives begin to ripple outward, affecting others in ways that may seem small at first, but eventually contribute to larger systems of dysfunction. And this is how something that starts at an individual level can scale into something that affects entire societies. Now, conversations about the world cannot only happen at the level of governments, no, or global institutions. Because while those spaces are very important, they're also influenced by the people who occupy them. And these people carry their own fears, their own biases, and unresolved issues into the decisions that they make. So if there's going to be any meaningful shift, it has to be a shift that will include a level of personal responsibility where individuals begin to examine how they think, how they respond under pressure, and whether they are operating from a place of clarity or confusion. Because without that level of awareness, okay, even well intentioned actions can lead to harmful outcomes. Now, when you talk about regulation, that's self regulation, especially in terms of mental and emotional stability, it stops being a soft concept and becomes something very practical. Because a person who cannot manage their internal state is more likely to react impulsively, right? Or misunderstand situations or make decisions that are driven by fear or frustration rather than reason. And when such a person is responsible for others, you see where I'm going? Whether in a family, a workplace, or in a position of leadership, the impact of that dysregulation becomes much more significant, which is why it is not an exaggeration to say that personal mental health plays a role in the kind of world that we are collectively creating. If there's one thing Shishan Wellness and Consultancy will do for you, it is to make you think in a different way, to make you check your mental wellness, and to make you sit down and ask yourself a question. A lot of us do not like to do that, do not like to self-reflect because we become insensitive, right? Ask yourself whether you're part of the problem that you're complaining about, because a level of honesty is uncomfortable, but it's necessary if anything is going to change for us as a people. Now, the idea that change can spread from individuals to families, from families to communities, and then to larger systems is not unrealistic. It's possible, but it requires consistency and honesty, because it is easier to point at global problems than it is to confront your personal problems. And yet, right, the latter is where real influence begins. Since a person who can think clearly, manage their emotions, and make grounded decisions is more likely to create stability in their immediate environment. And when enough people begin to operate this way, the overall tone of interactions, of relationships, and decision making starts to shift in a noticeable, positive way. So, while it may feel like the world is too far gone or too complicated to fix, the more useful approach is to recognize that the global situation is a reflection of many smaller parts working together. And that includes you, your environment, and the way you engage with others, which means that checking your mental state, questioning your assumptions, your biases, and learning how to stay grounded is not just personal work, it is part of a larger contribution to a more stable and thoughtful society. And if there is any place to start, it is with a simple but sometimes hard question of whether you are thinking clearly enough to make decisions that do not add to the problem.